You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 38, Touch of Grey.
Welcome to another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Marina Kravchuk.
And I'm Charlene Schmidt. Just like our flagship Mission Log podcast, each week here on Mission Log Prodigy, we discuss each and every episode of this animated series, discover what makes each of them special, and we see if there's any morals, meanings, or messages that we've learned.
This week, we've got A Touch of Grey. Please remember that Mission Log Prodigy is an in-depth review podcast, so if you have not seen this episode yet, you may want to put us on pause, watch the episode, and then come back to hear us talk all about it.
Mission Log Prodigy is produced for YouTube and as a regular podcast, so hit all of the buttons, regardless of where you are. Like and subscribe. If you want to leave us a review, we would love that. As Ashley on Genealogy says, 5 stars, please. We really appreciate that. And you can also follow us on social media. We are still on X, formerly known as Twitter, at ML_Prodigy. And we're also on Instagram at Mission Log Prodigy. One word, to keep up with all of our latest news and updates.
Let's also remind everybody why our podcast is so unique. We want to hear from the cadets, the younger Prodigy fans out there, who would like to share their thoughts on the show. Right now, we would like to hear what you thought about both parts of Season 2 finale, Ouroboros. So please record a voice message and tell us the following. What is your name and age? Did you like the episodes? What was your favorite part? And what did you learn? Then send your file to missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com, and please make sure it reaches our inbox no later than November 16th.
Now, we have one more thing to tell you before we jump into this week's episode, and that is, of course, to tell you all about our giveaway where you can win some Prodigy merch. Maybe something like Seasons 1 and 2 of Prodigy on Blu-Ray. How about that? Season 2's not even out as of when we're recording this, but it will be by the time we're done with the season. So it'll be brand spanking new. And that's just one of the prizes that you can win. Head over to the link in the description of this episode for the link to enter. And speaking of which, you want to stay tuned to the end of this video here, because we're going to be giving you a secret code that you can find only here in this episode. So with all of that said, let's kick things off for this show by answering the same questions we ask of our cadets. So Marina, did you like the episode?
Oh, yes. We have so many great character moments, and we're very much certainly ready to face the finale now. Everybody's in one spot, things are happening. And we do get the adult save the day story, finally, something that we talked about in the last episode.
We sure did. Yes, this is why I like the episode. And after seeing our crew, our kids, save the day so many times, It's great to see the old gang stepping up again. And what was your favorite part?
Well, exactly that. Anytime we had the Legacy 4 doing anything on screen together was an absolute chef's kiss. In particular, I like the moment when the 4 of them went on the away mission. So the Voyager trio and Wesley together on the screen, just beautiful.
That's good stuff. I got a kick out of the EMH conversing with hologram Janeway. They're cute. I might ship them even. More of that, please.
Yeah.
How about what you learned in this one?
We have some nice twists on lessons that we already kind of had throughout the season. So our crew has been learning all of them, working as a team, finding their roles, taking initiatives, learning how to do the right thing. But, one is never too old to be reminded of these lessons. So we get like a nice twist, the sort of lessons presented to the veteran crew. I also like the whole thing with that singular Loom that we encountered, sort of a very Horta type situation. Be mindful of completely writing off your adversary. And another thing is, I think that's one of the bigger ones, just because you can no longer do something does not mean that you're useless. You can still find a role, you can still fulfill a purpose.
Very much so. That last one is a biggie, and no doubt we're going to have more to say about that in the discussion. The lesson I'll go with is that life is messy because your best laid plans can lead to unexpected consequences. And you know what? That is okay. What's important is how you handle it. Yeah. That's what I'm going to go with. So thank you, Marina, for your answers to this week's questions. And now it is time for the recap for Touch of Grey, written by Jennifer Muro and directed by Sung Shin. In her log, Admiral Janeway expresses her apprehension about not hearing from the Protostar crew since they left for Solum. Perhaps all of these difficult choices she's made of late are becoming too much. Chakotay enters her ready room and reminds her that missions like this take time and patience. She reminds him she's not a fan of either. But the real reason why he's there is to commemorate the anniversary of her first command, the 14th anniversary to be exact. The passage of time has Janeway contemplating life on a farm in Indiana, especially now that Chakotay is back. Chakotay asks if she's serious about retiring early, but Tysus pages them to the bridge before they can discuss it any further. Now we're caught up to where we left off last week with the arrival of Iltheron and Wesley Crusher, who warns Janeway that they are all in danger. The new arrivals on Voyager go to sickbay, where the EMH reports that Wesley is experiencing neurolytic shock due to Ascensia's mind extractions. A cortical stimulator will repair the neural damage, but Wesley's capabilities as a traveler will take time to come back, if they do. Wesley doesn't know what will happen now that Ascensia has captured the Protostar crew. He's in the dark, just like everyone else. And speaking of Ascensia, Tysus brings a subspace transmission she's broadcasting to Janeway's attention. Ascensia shows the captured crew as proof to her people that outside forces are infiltrating Solum and wants Admiral Janeway herself to come and answer for this before her crew pays the price for their actions. It's obviously a bait, Tysus warns, but Janeway won't let members of her crew suffer. Chakotay, the EMH, and Wesley agree and want to come with her. So much for thoughts of retirement, because it's time to get back in the saddle. Aboard a prisoner train on Solum, Gwyn expresses regret about splitting the crew up. This one misstep might trigger a civil war. Majel reminds her that, on the other hand, Ascensia does not have Wesley and Iltheron right now. If she did, Starfleet and Solum would be at war, and that is a fate Gwyn avoided with her actions. Good things can still come out of a bad situation, Rocktalk says, and Gwyn agrees. Cheered up, she declares that they still control their own fate. The train makes a shaky stop, and Jacob's not as reassured about Gwyn's statement as they see Ascensia waiting for them. In the shuttle bay, the vehicle replicator is working on a Vaunicott shuttle, designed by Iltheron and with hologram Janeway's help. Admiral Janeway and her away team will use the ship to reach Solum, since Ascensia has scrambled transporter protocols. Iltheron volunteers to join the away team, but Janeway thinks he is best off staying aboard, where he has asylum. Meanwhile, the EMH remarks to hologram Janeway that he might not ever get used to working with the Admiral's holographic twin. She reminds him that their life experiences are quite different, and she's never left the Protostar. From her perspective, the EMH is lucky he has the immobile emitter and can join the away mission. But from his perspective, he's a little nervous. He hasn't been out in the field for a while, but perhaps it'll give him inspiration for his next holo novel. Hologram Janeway confesses that she's a big fan of his holo novels and can't wait to read the next one. The EMH is touched by her admiration. Tysus promises to keep Voyager Center's seat warm for Janeway until she gets back, and with that, they depart. Wesley takes the helm, and it's been a little while, but he hasn't lost his touch. Janeway mentions to him that she recently spoke with his mother, and when he asks how she is, Janeway responds that he should ask her himself. Yeah, Wesley, call your mom. But not right at this moment. They've approached Solum, and the EMH mimics an excellent Dreadnought voice when they are asked about the destination by the patrols. His conversation skills are questionable, but they're granted permission to land anyway. The location? The ruins of an ancient city repurposed so prisoners cannot escape. That's where Gwyn and the Protostar crew are being held. She pleads with Ascensia that they're all doomed if the Protostar doesn't get back to Tars Lamora. Ascensia is more interested in making her own future, though, and releases a captured member of the Loom from a below-ground chamber. Janeway and her away team make their way near to the Protostar crew's location, but the uphill climb takes a physical toll. They take a short break to sneak a look at what's happening and spot the crew in danger. Wesley remarks that if he had his power's full capabilities, he could transport them all there right now and rescue the crew. He cannot fathom the thought of them dying simply because of this fact, and Janeway reminds him that before he was a traveler, he was a Starfleet officer, and a fine one at that. That's what he needs to be now. They have a plan. Wesley and Chakotay will circle to the back of the dome where Ascensia is keeping Gwyn and the rest of the young crew and look for weaknesses. the EMH will come with Janeway, who will give Ascensia the gift of a baited admiral. As Ascensia watches the Loom give chase to the crew, a guard informs her of a visitor. It's Janeway, and she wants to negotiate the release of the prisoners with terms she thinks Ascensia will find quite attractive. Meanwhile, on the other side of the dome, Chakotay and Wesley find an entrance. While they wait out some guards on patrol, Chakotay uses the time to thank Wesley. Without him, he'd still be stuck on that planet. An alarm blares, and that's their chance to move in. As the Loom continues to give chase, Dal and Gwyn split from the group so it's distracted. That gives Rox, Zero, Jankum, and Majel a moment to observe that something isn't right with the Loom. Zero senses fear and loneliness, because it too is trapped here. Janeway offers herself and the intelligence of a Starfleet admiral at her disposal to Ascensia. No doubt that would be useful for the impending war Ascensia so clearly wants, yes? Nah, that's okay, Ascensia replies. She knows no other ships are coming to Voyager's aid anytime soon and bids Janeway farewell before firing a disruptor at her. But wait, Zero senses the Admiral, and the real her catches up with Wesley and Chakotay. It's the EMH dealing with Ascensia and stalling for time. Phasers are useless on the entrance Chakotay and Wesley found, so they'll have to improvise a way in, and once Zero tells Janeway about the Loom, she has a plan. She attaches her comm badge to the door, sets it on a countdown until kaboom! An explosion punches its way through and knocks power offline. The device controlling the Loom goes limp, and the creature realizes it's free and escapes. That's when Ascensia notices the mobile emitter on the EMH, and his Admiral Janeway disguise goes offline. He taps the mobile emitter and gets away because Ascensia's guards are too distracted by the chaos caused by the Loom. The crew and the away team reunite, but they aren't out of the woods yet. They still have to escape. They can't get to the ship, but what if the ship came to them? Wesley taps a few commands, and it arrives right on time, just as guards try shooting the craft down. But now there's another force at work against Ascensia, Iltheron. He has sent a message about how he has met the Offworlders and how they are not the enemy. Realizing what Ascensia has done to Solum, the planet's people have started revolting against her. As our crew make their way back to Voyager, most of the crew are pleased with this part of the mission's outcome. Jankum approves of Janeway's percussive maintenance, and Rocktalk can't help but geek out at Wesley's use of a control panel as a remote control. The EMH has inspiration for his next holo novel. But Gwyn, on the other hand, sees her world falling into civil war and cannot leave it behind. Dal agrees. They still need to complete the mission. And Janeway agrees too, with no argument. Whatever they need, they'll have. Why? Because she was just reminded that boldness isn't only for the young, and there's Starfleet. United, they shall overcome. The end for today.
What a great story. Like, literally, everybody's involved. Everybody's having interactions. So many great character moments. I love it. I just love it.
Oh, so much fun.
I mean, and we had a lot of observations too, because even though you have a lot of exposition going on and the dialogue and everything, there's little moments that kind of caught our attention, right?
Oh, tons. I mean, that's pretty par for the course for this podcast. But as usual, I have from the opening scene, I have to make a note, and it's because I think for the very first time this season, we get a teaser before the opening credits.
I think so. Yeah, we had quite a few cold opens in the first season, but I think that's the first time this one.
That's a good note catch. Number one right there, but I didn't stop. So I had to take notice because I always do, especially with Janeway-esque care about the bun of steel. One of the bridge officers on Voyager A has the Janeway bun of steel, and she's even a redhead. I think Janeway started a trend.
No, here's something for you. And I actually went back and rewatched that scene multiple times, probably 6-7 times in a row. Chakotay comes into Janeway's ready room. How on earth does he grab her framed comm badge so quickly? Like, you can actually see there's sort of like a sliding camera. Well, I should rephrase that. Camera sliding past, that little shelf that which she has all her little mementos. You can see the framed combat's right there. And then poof, he just puts it right in front of her. How, is there like a little thing missing that would get cut for time, or he has some kind of, I don't know, hand transporter, sort of like.
He's sneaky enough. Maybe he does. That's probably an old Maquis trick. But I normally
Yeah.
don't look at your notes until my notes are finished. But I did see this one, and I had to go back and forth on it myself. And I'm as lost as you are. How did he grab that thing without her noticing?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Because I remember originally watching it, it somehow didn't connect that we already saw this before, that it's that same combat. And then now
Yes.
during the rewatch and doing my notes, it was very much sort of, oh, wait. I mean, he's he's not regifting her own combat to her,
No.
but it's a nice part of the whole anniversary discussion. Speaking
Yeah.
of which, leave it to Chakotay to remember the anniversary. So he probably is the one who remembers all of them in their relationship.
Yeah, I have a feeling too. Yes. Yeah.
So something that I found rather curious, again, beginning of the scene, Janeway is recording her log, and she's literally recording it. She's typing it rather than dictating it, which is the norm. Normally, how many Star Trek, series where we have the episode starting where the captain is dictating their captain's log. In this case, she's typing it, and it's not the first time that's a different thing is done. Specifically, Janeway herself. There's a scene in Scorpion where it's the end of the episode and we find her writing down her log on a parchment with a quill pen, so really old style. And I'm thinking if that's a way to sort of keeping troubled thoughts at bay, doing it differently, so it's not just said out loud, it's actually physical effort to record the log.
Yeah, there must be something that works for her with that,
Yeah.
like that methodology, having to actually type it out or write it out or something. Maybe it gives her more focus. Maybe she can get the nuance out of her words a little better just because
Yeah.
of the way you have to process in that kind of form. But it is different, right? Because usually it's a video recording. And if not
Yeah.
that, it's audio. Not
Yeah.
necessarily, and then I have a feeling this is modern sensibilities taking hold here, but we've also seen plenty of people reading logs. So I have to assume that the video and the audio get converted to text, much like things do around in this day and age.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense. Yeah.
yeah. I was a little surprised in that scene by Chakotay's reaction to Janeway contemplating early retirement. Because I've
Yeah.
always had the sense that Chakotay's a perfectly good, capable officer, but I get the sense that he would happily leave it all behind for a life of peace and quiet if he really wanted to. Like, maybe settle down on a farm in Indiana with his lady and then get a pet monkey, grow some vegetables, do some woodworking. But much more on this later in the discussion.
Yeah. I do wonder if that's a side effect of being stuck, on Nisita for 10 years without any kind of diversion or change. I mean, that's got to be pretty rough. So now that he has a second chance at, doing and experiencing things, who knows? He might be, at least for a while, just yearning to move and explore and see new things. So I can see how that could kind of make it sort of like un-Chakotay-like, but not the Chakotay that we used to know before he got stranded.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. Something that it suddenly hit me, even though it's been a gradual process throughout the season, just how much more sophisticated the dialogue is. Like we get a little bit less of, very explicit explanations of what something is or what something does. You have this moment where Wesley is in the sick bay, and Image, in a matter of about, I don't know, like a single paragraph, couple of sentences, has a lot of technobabble, neural pathways, and neuralitic shock, and cortical stimulator, etc. It still works because we have visual context. You don't necessarily have to know what a neural pathway is, but because of the situation that Wesley finds himself in, it's obvious that we're talking about his brain and everything else. So the concepts are explained. We do still get explanation, the Ascensia activated transporter scramblers, and then Chakotay helpfully piped in. It's like, oh yeah, so nobody can beam down and up.
Right.
So that still works, but overall, there is much more technobabble now.
That's a really great observation. And to maybe further on this thought a little bit, think about where we started in season 1. This job's done a really great job of easing newcomers into the technobabble. Didn't start out that way, but this is where it's come full circle to where I'd say it's your average Star Trek technobabble. Can't even say technobabble. We do see, just not necessarily told, but shown, love that. We see from his appearance that Tysus has recovered from the rapid aging that he experienced from the Incursor. So thank goodness he's recovered like that.
Yeah. What I found surprising is Tysus, he's not a rule breaker. He's very much a model Starfleet commander. The moment that Janeway announces that she's going on the mission, and he doesn't say anything. Chakotay might have piped in, especially during the 7 years on Voyager, and he knows how risky Janeway can get. Nevertheless,
Yes.
Tysus, at the moment everybody's like, yes, I'm joining the mission, and I'm joining the mission. He just says, yeah, go. I'll keep your seat warm for you.
I think he kind of just knows. Like, this is his
point,
place. This
probably.
is his job, is to keep the seat warm. Chances are that Tysus and Janeway have had this discussion before themselves, and he just kind of knows, I'm not even going to bother challenging her on it. She's going.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, it's supposed to be a limitation. Your captains are not going on missions. In this case, it's not just a captain, commanding officer. It's a full admiral. So, or I should say vice admiral. But
Even so, this is Janeway.
Yeah. Well, speaking about going on the mission, it is unsettling to see how much Wesley slowed down. I mean, in the physical sense, his movements are no longer frenetic. He's not speaking very, very quickly. He's slowly expressing himself. He's very obviously unsure of what further actions to occur. Having lost his traveler powers, whether temporarily or permanently, is really put everything in the bind. And, that's quote of his where he says, for the first time in a long while, I'm in the dark like everybody else. So that's a bit disconcerting. I mean, on one hand, we still have Wesley with all his amazing knowledge, but at the same time, he's sort of in a situation where he has very limited access to it in a way.
He's definitely knocked down several notches, and not just with his powers as a traveler either.
Yeah.
I think it's a great observation that physically he is also still very much recovering. The frenetic energy is gone, like you said. That's great observations. Plus, later on, when they're making the climb to the ruins to find Ascensia and the crew, he's like, I forgot how to use my quads. So I think physically he's hurting too, but I've also got a little more to say on that as far as maybe age goes.
Well, the moment right after Janeway basically finished her moment of doubting and wondering what's going on and everything, the moment she knows that the crew is threatened, she just springs right back into action. It's just like this very quick. I already used that expression, but it's like gung-ho Janeway is very much back. And we get a very TNG era moment when the away team gets assembled. It was very reminiscent of what we've seen in the previous Star Trek productions. And in this case, especially seeing how we have actually 4 legacy characters doing stuff together. That moment was a treat. That's like just like the old times.
Yeah, getting the old band back together is what it feels like. It is nice to see our higher ranking officers going back into the trenches. Like we mentioned that our senior officers didn't have much to do in Ascension, and now it's their turn to step up, and boy, did they. Love it.
Yeah. Well, it's continuing as far as Wesley's situation is concerned. There's something that we talked about when, we had them all inside the time ziggurat. Wesley was giving them the download on the whole time paradox problem. Wesley still has the Starfleet officer training very much ingrained in him. Despite being physically incapacitated and to a degree mentally as well, he nevertheless volunteers to go in that moment where Janeway is going and the Doctor's going and Chakotay is going, and of course that moment when he's completely heartbroken. If they die because of me, Janeway reminds me that he used to be a heck of a good officer. And that's precisely who he is in the moment and who's needed to be in the moment.
Right.
And of course, he's doing the usual where, you have a wonderful, Starfleet imagination when he provides this remote control for the transport ship so that everybody can escape. So in this case, it's like Wesley's back in the fold, into Starfleet fold, I should say, very much so.
And very useful. He is not any one thing. He is not just this traveler-powered super character. No, Wesley is a pilot. He has a brilliant mind. He thinks outside the box. He can think on his feet. And I love that moment where Janeway tells him, I need you to be that Starfleet officer. It's like the gears click in him and he focuses and he says, okay. And then that's it. He's ready to go. It was a really great moment.
Yeah, and he's not just like oh, that's a singular traveler who's the only one left in the universe. No, he's back being part of the team, part of the whole.
Yeah.
Speaking of transport ship, we see the vehicle replicator at work again. That was a treat.
Yeah. We're 2 for 2 in the last 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for you. Minus the wings, does the Vanacott ship that the replicator made remind you of Peanut Hamper at all from Lower Decks? It kind of looks like an Exocop to me.
See, until you said that, yes, the front part very much so. But I was actually very impressed by the whole idea of the wings. It reminded me several other science fiction productions that had similar idea of like in the Dune, for example, where you have actual wings for mechanical transport, flying transport. It's something that we already talked about, well, very quickly touched upon. That scene with EMH and hologram Janeway.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, it's hysterical. I think this is, unexpected. I did not quite expect actually hologram Janeway to completely fangirl over EMH. That was such a hoot. But it also serves as a wonderful illustration and a reminder that hologram Janeway may be based on real Janeway in so many different parameters, probably, but she is a different entity. She is a different character. And I wonder if, that moment when EMH kind of confesses that he's nervous about going back in the field, like, is it because he's talking to a fellow hologram that he's more comfortable revealing that rather than talking to any of the other officers on board or any of the officers that he used to be with on Voyager? So this was a wonderful, both funny and sweet scene, I thought.
Absolutely. It was great seeing them open up. And that is a great question. Is he doing this because familiarity with a fellow officer, a hologram, both? Either way,
Yeah.
I am shipping this. I loved her fangirling over his holonovels because she's had all this time on the Protostar and apparently has access to them. And hey, good on her. I definitely want to see more of this in the future.
Yeah, and I just thought about that. This is a great sort of tie-in back to Voyager when we find out that the Doctor sort of dabbled in writing of holonovels. Apparently, this habit is, or I don't know, a little side gig perhaps, is very much alive because it sounds like he's done quite a few since then. Holonovels, plural. So,
yeah, still at it.
So we have, so in this case it's EMH and hologram Janeway, but in general, going back to interactions between the legacy characters, this was absolutely wonderful. We have Janeway and Wesley having a quick moment where they're talking about Dr. Crusher and he's, call your mother.
Please call your mother.
Yeah, the whole short climbing bit where, it's age on the part of Janeway Chakotay and complete disuse of muscles on the part of Wesley. Meanwhile, EMH is just ready to go.
Right, he's fine.
Yeah,
it's just the humanoids having some trouble. Although Chakotay seems to be handling it pretty well, living abandoned on a planet for a while. He had to take care of himself pretty good.
Exactly. Well, that plus I am positive that he's probably in the state of like, I can actually move, I can actually go somewhere. And so he's probably like, you know what? Yeah, maybe my lower back is going to be killing afterward, but I moved. I went. Have we ever had the word humdinger used on Star Trek before? I don't think so. This the moment where EMH pretends to be a dreadnought. This was hysterical. And we get an addition to the list of I'm a doctor, not something. I'm a doctor, not a covert operative.
Yep.
So
gotta love all of that. So to answer your question, to my knowledge, I don't think the word humdinger has been used in a Star Trek series. I know that Rick Berman, in an interview, maybe with TV Guide, described that the finale of Star Trek The Next Generation as a humdinger. Or it might have been Generations. This is also 30-something years ago now. So the memory fails me a little bit, but that is the only instance where I can think of the word humdinger being used in some sort of Star Trek context. And if I'm wrong about that, get online, guys, and hit us up in the comments. Please, let us know. So you mentioned the EMH sounding like Dreadnought, altering his voice. That was such a genius move. Was not expecting it and was like, whoa, first seeing that. It's also a great little bit of foreshadowing for later what
Yeah,
happens later with Janeway when he's portraying her. Again, a lot of fun. Didn't see that coming. Good
yeah,
creative stuff.
yeah. That was a very good moment. I mean, we get another scene with Ascensia, basically just illustrating what a complete, well, whether you call it mustache twirling or not, but she is a villain. When she says, "I make my own future," she has
Hmm.
absolutely no care for the trouble the timeline is in, the universe is in. In her mind, her ends certainly justify her means, and that's all that matters. So it only confirmed, when Janeway shows up, the baiting was not to do anything. It was not to actually, kidnap Janeway or establish any kind of bargaining to avoid the war. It was very basic. She just wanted to, cut the head off, leave Voyager and Protostar crews without a leader. That was the whole thing. Because,
Yeah.
as we know, she explains it. She's like, I know nobody's coming to help you. So in this case, she's literally, trying to get to the crew.
Yeah. You brought up the mustache twirling villain thing again. And I said that way back when, but the more that we have seen of her at work, no, she is super dangerous and probably no more dangerous than she could be possibly right here.
Yeah,
And for her
especially
motives, her reasoning, yeah.
exactly considering that the weaponry she now possesses and Wesley being incapacitated. This is a very dangerous situation.
Serious disadvantage. Yeah. So, one thing that I had to do is I had to look up the word click as a unit of measurement because I am not military and I'm an American. So, turns out this is a real thing, just in
Yeah.
case you're wondering too. It's a shorthand way of saying kilometer and it's not a made up sci fi thing.
Yeah, I know that from various sci-fi novels because it comes up more
Ah,
frequently than you would think.
okay.
Yeah, but that's a good clarification because it could have been. It's like, what is this? Is this Klingon? What?
I mean, they make
um,
stuff up all the time, so I legit wanted to know, is this a real thing or is
yeah,
this a Star Trek thing?
yeah. No, it's real. Um, so we have the loom back. Granted, it's a very sort of like boxed in, pardon the pun, situation, and we're dealing with only a single one. I love the fact that it's rock. That's very fitting. The first one
Oh,
to notice
yes.
that something is off. So
Yeah.
all that xenobiology is all still there. And, the fact that she just she's not even protecting herself. She gets up, she's like, it's sick. And then, of course, Zero senses fear and loneliness because the loom is also trapped. And I'm curious, because we're dealing with a single individuum here.
Mhm.
Does Loom actually have a notion of gratitude? And think that that moment when the wall blows open, and you have Chakotay and Janeway, they're all standing outside. The kids are inside, and Loom ignores all of them and goes straight for the Baunakat guards.
Right. Yeah, is that sort of like acknowledging having some gratitude that or are we putting human emotions on an
Yeah,
alien species? It's really hard to know. I've got more for this in the discussion just because it's a really fascinating thing to think about. And I already mentioned this a little bit, but I want to go into a little more detail about expressing appreciation for depicting our older heroes a little honestly regarding physical stamina. Because,
yeah,
look, I'm in my earlier 40s and I am not 20 anymore. And boy, do I know it. And I know 43 is probably nothing compared to 63 and 83 and so on. However, our bodies do change as we get older. And even
yeah,
if we keep them in good shape, over time, they are just not going to be as capable of what they used to when we were
yeah,
younger. They wear out a little sooner, they take a little longer to
yeah,
recover. Chances are
yeah.
they probably needed a day to just relax after this.
Yeah, no, but as you recall, after that shuttle crash with the episode with Time Ziggurat, when Janeway gets out of the
Exactly.
wreckage, and she says, "Like, it used to be so much easier," So
Right.
yeah,
Not anymore. It didn't.
so going back to humdingers and stuff, that little terrific twist with faking out Essentia, the fake Admiral Janeway.
Oh, yeah.
What a fantastic usage of EMH in this episode. We
Genius.
have, that grand death scene, the over dramatic, overacted. Both
Oh yeah.
Kate and Bob turned in great performances in this episode. It kind of reminded me. So in live action, we had a similar episode in Voyager, Renaissance Man, when the Doctor had to impersonate various crew members.
That's
But
right.
in this case, I just find it's so meta. So we do not have the actual physical actor, obviously. Nevertheless, I mean, it is Kate playing the Doctor, playing the Janeway, Admiral Janeway. It's like you have
Yeah.
the multiple things to hit. Spectacular. A small side note we have, for those who are not aware, there's the eternal connection between Star Trek and Shakespeare. One way or
Oh yeah.
another, things pop up. And in this case, the last moment when Janeway slash Doctor dies, the rest is silence. That's actually a quote from Hamlet. So it's right on the money.
It's right about that point where I started to realize that something was up because the EMH was doing such a good job portraying Janeway. I was fooled until about that moment of overacting, and then the medical terminology started spilling out, and then that was really the tell. But otherwise, was doing really good. Well, how about we get into our discussion,
Yeah.
because there's some really great stuff to explore into this episode. So, how about you kick us off? What did you find meaningful or memorable here?
Well, at the very beginning, right from the get-go, it's sort of right in your face, an unexpected moment of Janeway having self-doubt and explicitly talking about it. Too
Yeah.
many things we know had occurred in her life and in her career, and the fact that she's saying, "I'm beginning to wonder if it's becoming too much." And it's not because she's become too jaded or she cares less. I mean, she's a vice admiral. On the contrary, I think precisely because she's still the leader who's very much hands-on, because she still cares a lot. It's that
Yeah.
constant state of being in the saddle all the time. That's what's wearing and weighing her down. So she's probably worried, like, am I losing any kind of fresh outlook? Do I still have the necessary perspective or an initiative on dealing with the impossible situations with no easy answers? So yeah, that was a big moment right from the beginning.
Yeah, and to see our hero, Janeway, contemplating these types of questions really is interesting. Lest we forget, though, Starfleet is a demanding, high stress, all consuming
Yeah,
career. And it really made me think about, especially the baby boomer generation right now, that is either retired, considering
yeah,
retirement, or preparing to retire in real life. And boomers in 90s Trek, both were at a time when your identity was wrapped up in what you did, right? You
hmm
were defined by your job. And this is reflected heavily in Starfleet. It seems like everybody is a complete workaholic, if you ask me.
yeah,
And I know certainly with folks in my parents' generation, a lot of the time, one of the biggest questions when contemplating, well, is it time to hang it up? Is it time to go? Is, without my job, what am I? And
yeah.
when is the time to go? Like, I still feel useful. I'm still sharp. I can still do all the things. But at the same time, is if that's all that your life is, maybe it's time to try something else. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, it's the whole thing kind of ties back in this case, especially, Janeway needs the reminder that, she's not losing perspective. She is part of the team, and the good team that is good because of her being a good leader. So in this case, the fact that she says, I've been reminded boldness is not only for the young. When Starfleet United, we can overcome, we can do a lot of things. It's yet another turn on the idea that has been running through the entire second season, and that is working as a team and not giving up. Only this time, it's not a lesson for our young kids; it's a reminder to the veteran officers.
Right. There's no one size fits all answer to the questions Janeway is asking herself. Some folks feel absolute relief when they walk away from what they have done with the majority of their life, and others don't want to stop until they collapse and have to. I think of William Shatner, who's well into his 90s, still loves to go to work and doesn't see any reason to do anything else. And then there's others who wish that they could focus on things besides their work and can't, most likely due to finances. We're just all over the place as far as that go. And in the 21st century, we're seeing a very interesting shift too, right, on work-life balance, especially in the wake of COVID that really made folks reevaluate what was important. And I would say work-life balance is more of a priority for people now. And we see that reflected in Star Trek Discovery, too, where there is a
Yeah.
better balance. So I just find this whole aspect, this little conversation sparking this much of a conversation,
Yeah.
very
Well,
fascinating.
I mean, the moment of self-doubt doesn't last very long, as we see.
Right.
The fact is, Janeway is a leader. Janeway is a mentor. Janeway is a protector. We know how fiercely protective she is. So the moment we know that, oh, let the crew suffer, not on my watch. So let's get back in the saddle. And, Janeway, Mama Bear, rears her head and she's back in action.
Yes, love
And
Mama
that's...
Bear. All that was missing was the tank top. We need that Janeway coming back for one more round, but choosing her crew is an automatic choice
Yeah.
for Janeway, even regardless of whatever she might be personally going through. And the former rides the latter all the time. And I don't even think it's just like a captain thing for her. I mean, that's
Yeah.
certainly a part of it, but there is something very innate in Janeway that is willing to sacrifice for others. It's built into her. Her compassion for the Ocampa is what stranded Voyager in the Delta
Yeah.
Quadrant in the first place, but her compassion and her willingness to sacrifice is also what helped them get home. She set aside so much of her personal life to get that ship home in 7 years. So, an interesting balance there, that could hurt and help.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, finding yourself in a situation where you can no longer do something and yet, still being useful. Wesley's loss of powers reminded me of a TNG episode, The Loss, where Commander Troy Counselor Troy, pardon me, loses her empathetic powers. She can no longer read the aliens and everything, and she feels that's it. Her career is over. In this case, Wesley does not go through the same dramatic, I'm no longer the traveler. I can't do my thing.
Right.
He, as I said, he snaps back. He falls back into being part of the team. He can still perform his duty. That's his role to play. In this case, his skills as pilot are crucial for everyone to escape. So he still is useful. He still finds a place for himself.
Yeah, he does almost the opposite of what Troy does. She kind
Yeah.
of sulks and asks the questions, what am I now? He's like, okay, well, I can't mentally take us anywhere, but I can still pilot the ship. I can still convert the control panel into a remote control, and we can get the ship to us instead of
Yeah.
us going to it. I love it. It's yet another twist on the go where you're needed theme that we've had all season long. And it also reflects how no character and no person in real life can or should be any one thing. Like, we are a bundle of multitudes of different experiences. And this episode shows how, like, that is a huge strength when it's used well. Not just on
Yeah.
TV, in real life as well, but also on
Yeah.
TV.
So we've had a lot of interactions with the Legacy crew, and we've been mostly talking about them. But we have
'cause
a
we love
wonderful
them.
moment with our kids, and that's the moment where they're on the
Yeah.
prison transport, and Gwyn is down, and they all do their best to cheer her up, and in the lovely and wise ways. And Zero says, "Uncertainty is a predecessor to hope," and
quote.
Majel is very logical and points out that if Gwyn didn't do what she did, there's probably already be a war with Starfleet because Ascensia would have both Wesley and Iltheron. And then, of course, Rock chimes in. Even good things can come out of bad situations. So, this was a lovely scene to kind of remind that, things, you cannot predict what's going to happen in a given circumstances. Sometimes good things can come out of a bad situation.
Yeah, I mean, Rock knows that with her unexpected variable, the
Yeah.
brittle, right? And you know what? It's even okay to have doubts along the way. Like Jacob certainly did when the transport stopped and saw Ascensia waiting for them. Like, are you sure we control our fate here? Or is she controlling our fate? But look, most of us aren't travelers. We can't calculate our way through time and space while we're here on this planet. And you can't always control what happens to you, but you can always control how you respond to it. So it's very cool to see that in action with the kids. Like you said, the key word is wise. Really good. They've been in some really messy circumstances, and life in general is messy, right?
Yeah.
So you never know what is going to come your way necessarily, but it's all about how you handle it. That's the really important thing. That's your true test of character. That's your Kobayashi Maru. So I do have one more thing here, and we mentioned this very briefly earlier. that's talking about the Loom.
Yeah.
Basically feeling lonely, it's captured, it's suffering. I love that our crew, despite this creature being a huge threat, they had empathy for it. Once they
Yeah.
sensed that something was off, Rock noticed it, Zero sensed it. It gives us those human feelings that at least we can relate to it, whether that's what the creature was experiencing or not. But it sure seems that way. It seems like they found a way to gain some common ground. And once that was established, it's like the Loom realized that what they did was an act of compassion and was therefore going to leave them alone. They're no longer
Yeah.
a threat. They're not involved with any of this anymore. And so it's like a expression of gratitude, or at least acknowledging the act of kindness. It has nothing to do with a language barrier or anything. Something happened there. And so as far as like a moral or a message or a meaning goes, I think we can translate to our own lives that, look, you can meet someone halfway, see what happens. Always try to
Yeah.
get common ground, and they might not meet you back, but you know what? At least you tried.
Yeah, that's very true. I
Yeah.
mean, we don't know if that's going to have any kind of effect in the finale or not, but at the very least, it shows again the fact that our crew has certainly grown up and matured to sort of to see what the a moral compass, the right way. I love the fact that Rock just went, something's wrong, it's sick. That was just an
Yeah.
absolutely delightful moment. So we probably should wrap up.
Yes,
This
we've been
was
talking a bit.
yeah, and I can't believe we're almost at the end.
I
And I mean, not
know.
only the episode, but the
The
end of the season.
season, but you know
Yeah.
what? Dal said it. This isn't over yet. And so, as we approach the last 2 episodes of the season, we know this isn't going to end with a whimper. Not this show. We're not limping to the finish line. Oh, and I think I'm ready for the final stretch here. I don't know. How about you?
I love that moment at the very last scene where Dal says, "We've got to finish what we started," or I
Yeah.
should say, it's like, "You've got to finish what you started." This literally applies to every character. Whether you're going,
Yeah.
the antagonist, Ascensia. I mean, she's got to finish what she started. She wants to attack Federation, and then of course on our end, everybody from Wesley to Chakotay to Dal to everybody, we have to finish what we started with, trying to save the timeline, and we're trying to save Gwen, and by extension Iltharan, trying to save Solom.
Yeah.
So this is, we already mentioned a different episode having a sort of precipice. This is not a precipice. This is like literally, yes, we're going full steam into a big ending, and I can't
Yeah.
wait to discuss it.
Should be a lot of fun. Well, for the time being, we've reached the end of this show. But before we go, we do have that one last thing to do, and that is to give you the special code you can use to enter our giveaway, and you're going to find it only here. So congrats on making it. The code for this week is Roddenberry. Roddenberry. Remember to go to the link provided in the description of this episode, or look for it on our social media channels.
So thank you everyone for joining us here on Mission Log Prodigy. If you enjoyed our show, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our Mission Log Prodigy playlist on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel, or find us on your podcast catcher of choice. Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, production and technical direction by Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. And if you'd like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog.
Next week, we will begin our coverage of the Season 2 finale, Ouroboros, with Part 1. And cadets, don't forget to watch the episode. Send us your thoughts no later than Saturday, November 16th. We can't wait to hear what you have to say, but for now, let's hear what y'all had to say about Touch of Grey.
Receiving listener communications. Message playback begins.
All right, what's your name and your age?
My name is Luke and my age is 9.
Rook, did you like the episode?
Yes.
All right. What's your favorite part of the episode?
My favorite part of the episode was when the kids were battling the Nook.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. They were getting pretty scrappy there. What do you learn from the episode?
That looks can be deceiving.
How do you mean?
Like, I mean that, like, when the Loom was trying to attack them, it looked like it looked like it wanted to kill them, but actually, it just wanted to get out.
It was, yeah. I almost kind of felt sorry for the Loom in that one, right? Like a caged creature.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.